Does who the Sun endorses really make any difference in these days when nobody buys a newspaper anywhere? Well, that's not strictly true. The Sun still has a very healthy circulation, but you're right, newspapers in general have gone down. They did it in a slightly understated way, but if you look at the draft front page that they've got, it looks as if they're talking about Gareth Southgate. They said England needs a new manager or something along those lines. Do newspaper endorsements matter nowadays at all, Joe?
Well, they matter to some degree to some people, and in a close election that may make a difference. I don't think the Sun's endorsement is going to make a significant impact this time around, not least because it's such a half-cocked approach to endorsement, and it's basically just saying, oh well, we'll go with them. I doubt.
Doesn't that reflect the electorate though?
Well, I think it reflects the electorate to some extent, but I think if you're looking for an endorsement to make a difference, it has to be a full-throated, ongoing endorsement throughout the entire campaign, and getting something in just before the deadline is not going to make much difference either. There, it will not be the Sun what won it.
No, the Times still hasn't endorsed anyone, which I would have thought if the Sun has gone for Labour, I think the Times would. But I mean, it's a bit late now, isn't it?
Sunday Times
has, but the Times hasn't. Which I think is odd that they haven't said anything. Alys?
I'm always a bit
Has
suspicious.
City AM endorsed anybody?
Well, I encourage your listeners to read the editorial that we published this morning. It's sort of Tories don't deserve to win, but Labour, must be held to account.
So vote reform then?
I wouldn't. I mean, no. Sorry.
What's the point of writing on one hand and on the other hand editorial?
Well, ask the editor. But I think the City AM wants to see a government that supports the City of London, that's interested in free markets and all of those kind of things. And I think we don't believe that the Tory party in its current state is that, and nor do we think Labour is. But on the question of the Sun, I mean, I've always been a bit suspicious of the idea that Rupert Murdoch somehow is this kind of puppet master that seeks to manipulate the media. I think his main interest is in selling papers. And in order to do that, he makes his papers align with where the public are. And I think it's very clear how the public are going to vote. And I think that's why he's decided that the Sun is endorsing Labour, I think because that's where the public are. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
I wonder how much influence he himself has in that decision. Or do you think he actually dictates it, or do you think he is part of a group that decides it?
I have no idea. I'm not involved in editorial meetings at the Sun.
Is he?
Well, another one.
Yeah, I'm not saying that as a flippant
you may be right.
comment. I think he genuinely might
is,
be.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Andrew?
Well, I know nothing of Rupert Murdoch's love life, and I want to keep it that way, frankly. But I don't think the Sun's as influential as it was. I mean, I was looking up the readership figures actually because I was curious as to what it was compared with, say, 92. They had 4 million readers then. They're down to 1 million. Now, of course, they've still got an online readership, which is probably quite large as well. But, they are less influential. And I think your caller's right that the newspapers, it's not that nobody reads the newspapers, but they are less read and they are less influential. And, I think it's always been overemphasised, really, how much people just kind of read the newspaper and go, well, I better vote that way then. But it's about the climate they create. And I think actually the Sun has been responsible for pumping poison into our political veins for a long time. And, the amount of bigotry, when I was growing up against gay people, single mothers, more recently against disabled people, people on benefits, is absolutely vile. And to be honest, I wouldn't want their endorsement, frankly.
Bob?
I think newspapers don't have the clout that they did. I'm sure it does make a difference, and I'd rather any major newspaper was endorsing my party than not. But how much of a difference it will make in the overall scheme of things, I'm not so certain of now. It might in some seats, it might on the margins. I think that's the thing. What I picked up certainly on the doorsteps is people do interestingly take a lot more notice of the candidate's social media. I was quite struck. A number of people have said, "Oh yeah, we've seen your guy or somebody else's stuff." I won't mention the name, but I've seen X or Y's social media posts, and they've either liked it or they haven't. And I think that's quite interesting. That's a format where if they do it well, if the candidates, whichever side, do it well, that can actually have perhaps a very useful impact.
It's
on
interesting.
people.
These community sites next door, they I think, are going to be quite influential.
They I think, have more influence maybe.
I don't read our local one, but my partner does, and is constantly telling me, oh, they've been saying this and that. And
that's right.
You think, well, that is a new phenomenon.
It is. It's something that,
when
I was a candidate in the past, I wouldn't have picked up, Iain.
No.
I've seen it this time in a way that you haven't before.